Hello everyone. We're going to pick up where we left off, which is modifying polylines. So right here we have a polyline that I made into an arrow. So again, for polyline, it's PL spacebar, and picked up where I left off, and I could keep drawing. But so that's our polyline. So this is a single polyline right here. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you for modifying it is, let's say I want to point this arrow in a different direction. So what I can do is, if I type RO, is going to be the shortcut for rotate. I'm going to select the object, the polyline that I want to rotate. So I've selected it, space bar. Now select the base point. So this is going to be the point that the item rotates around. So if I point here in the center, then it is going to then rotate off of that point. So I just then turn my mouse, and then if I want the arrow pointing up, now it points up, and I've rotated the object. So I'm going to do it again, RO for rotate, and then spacebar. Now I'm left clicking on it to select the item, and then spacebar. Now it wants a base point. So now I could click, let's say, way over here. Now when I rotate it, now it's going to use that base point as a rotation point. So normally when I'm doing rotations, I'm not doing something way out here. It's just harder to rotate off of. I could do that. But typically, if I'm rotating, RO for rotate, is I'm pretty much trying to be in the center of the object to then rotate it off of a point. So if I wanted to rotate it in this direction. So that's the rotate command. Now I want to show you guys too, over here, if you pull down this little arrow, you can have all these little shortcuts. So now I could go back, and if I wanted to go back and undos, I could come here and I could find, it's there. And then that undid everything to get us back to normal. Now the next thing is, besides rotating, let's say I wanted to pick up this object and move it somewhere else in the drawing. If I just select it, if I just move one point, it then morphs the object into something that I don't want it to be. So to undo this, I'm going to hit U, and then spacebar is going to undo it. Or you could have hit the arrow, but U and spacebar is your undo command. So again, I move something and I wanted to get out of it, it's just U and then spacebar undoes that command and goes backwards. And you can go backwards multiple. Let's say I moved it this way, and this way, and this way. So undo once, use spacebar twice, use spacebar a third time. I've gone back those multiple steps. So that's an important task as you're doing stuff you're undoubtedly going to mess up at some point and want to undo and get back to where you were at. Now, if I wanted to move, instead of, one way you could do it, but it would be very time intensive, is if you hold the shift key and then you select every single vertice that then turns red, and you can see if you then mess that up, then you have to start all over like I did. But every single vertice, then I can move it. but that's kind of time intensive. So I had to click all those points. What happens if I had 100 points? That would be not feasible. So the easiest is I hit M for move, M spacebar, left click on it, and I've selected the object, enter. Now I'm going to select my base point. So let's say I just want it, let's say I want the base point to be here off the point, because I want that point to be in a special location, pointing to something in the drawing. I can then click, and then I can move it to wherever I want. So let's say I want it now pointed here, and I pointed there. But I can also M spacebar, left click. Let's say I want to move it here. I can move it from the rear point. And spacebar, left click on it. I could pick way over here, not even on the object, and move it. Now, one of the things that I can do too is, let's say I want to move it exactly. I want to move it 1 foot. So I pull it in the direction that I want to move it. So I'm moving it from towards my right. And I typed in 1 foot and I hit enter. Now you will see it moved 1 foot in that direction. Let's say I wanted to move it 1 foot going towards the top. And I do 1 foot. You can then see when I zoom back out, it moved 1 foot up. So you can move it a specific distance of whatever you want it to be here. So I'll make a copy so you can see. Now when I zoom out, I move it in my mouse in the direction that I want to go. And I just then type in the distance. And now it has moved it exactly 1 foot up from where it used to be. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next command. So let's say I want to mirror this. This is really useful on many items to get an exact copy. So MI for mirror. Select the object with my left click. Spacebar. Now it's going to ask me for a line to mirror. It can either be just imaginary points that you create, or I like to actually use a line. So I created my first point, selected it. Now I'm going to select my second point. Left click again. Now it says down here, do I want to erase my source object? So if I wanted this to disappear, I only wanted it moving over to here, then I could erase it, type Y or yes to erase it, or I could click the default is no. I don't want it erased, so I'm just going to hit spacebar for default. And now I have a mirrored object of that same exact item. So I actually used, and we'll show you real quick, the mirror command to actually make this item. So when I drew this is what I drew as a polyline. This was my polyline. So all I did was then I MI to mirror, select the object, spacebar, then I clicked the point because I knew that would be the line that I wanted it off of. And then with the polar command, or the polar selection on, is then I get the nice snap line. Now, click. I don't want to erase the source object, so I just hit enter. And now I've made a mirror, so this becomes a uniform symmetric arrow. And then, you can then mirror off of that. And then the great thing is now when you do mirrors, you can then select multiple objects. And now, I can then start making commands off of that. So then I easily had come in and duplicated this object by mirroring it. And now it's symmetrical. Now here's another one. We're going to go into scale. So SC for scale. So I did SC and then spacebar. Now I'm going to select my item, spacebar. Now I'm going to choose the base point where I want it to scale from. So I'm going to choose here. Now I can freeform it. So now the closer I am to that scale point, that base point that we had, is then I'm below 100%. So this is 100%. Now this is probably 50%, 25%. So I'm scaling it down. Or I can pull it away from the base point and make it really big. So you can see I can then just eyeballing it, whatever size that I want it to be, I can just pull or get closer in from that base point and then click when I'm done. Undo that. And then let's say I knew an exact size, so I'm going to scale it, but this time I'm going to choose from this point. Let's say I had it pointing to something, but the arrow needed to be twice as big. So now I do 2 for the scale factor. Now the arrow's twice as big. And because it's scaled off of that point, if I had this ball here the entire time, I'll go backwards actually here. Sorry. So you can see it picks up on the quadrant of the circle, but if I scale it, let's say twice is my scale, because I chose the point here at the arrow, is that location stayed the same, everything else scaled up by 2, and it still is at the quadrant. And then I could also scale down by, let's say now 4. So 4 is gonna, sorry, not scale down by 4. It would be, I wanted it 25% of what it used to be. So 0.25. Now I've made it smaller. Let's say I wanted to do 10%, so 0.1, and made it even smaller. Well, that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one.